if you can separate the performance from who you are, if you can get to that point in life, I think you can begin to really live. Because I think if failure is so intimidating to you that you won't try, then I don't know a greater failure than not trying.
Welcome to the Up Your Average podcast, where Keith and Doug give no-nonsense advice to level up your life. So buckle up and listen closely to Up Your Average.
Good morning, friends. It's another beautiful day at Gimbal and Up Your Average. Today's thoughts kind of sprung forth from our conversation we had with our friend Sean at the Neiman Harvest Market a few weeks ago. The organization, the family that owns that business has a saying, try fast, and fail cheap. And I just wonder about that whole idea, how easy that is for most of us to process. The idea of failure seems like it's almost a paralyzing idea to a lot of people. And so I thought a good, healthy conversation about failure would be a good idea today. Doug, what do you think?
What do I think about failure?
Yeah.
I don't like it.
I mean, that chair you're sitting on there is hard for a lot of people even to sit on because it feels like you're just going to fall out of it sometimes.
Yeah, I'd rather everything just go perfectly.
I what I was prepping for as I was thinking about this was some of the top failures I've had in life, but I hijacked it a little bit. I went up the generational tree and found Evansville College credit from Ralph Wendell Tyner. I found his report card.
How do you do?
I'm missing the date here. January 7th, 1969. Kenneth Jones, the registrar, kind of signed this thing to validate it. But when this was printed, his cumulative GPA, 2.27. However, for that quarter, he had a 3.3. That's pretty good.
He stepped it up.
Yeah. And I would suggest that a lot of people would say this report card would be a failure, like to 2.27. A lot of times that might even get you kicked out of a college in the day. But does that define who Ralph Wendell was?
No.
Yeah. And what's really cool about this is it's dated January 7th, 1969. He was born in 1932. So
He's a learner.
He was 37 years old roughly when this was going on.
Yeah.
And
That's good.
how big of a success is that, to be willing to go get punched in the face where you're not doing great, but stay in the boxing ring.
Yeah.
So that was a picture of what I thought about, like failure and how critical failure is. Like, I think it may be one of the most important teachers on the planet.
Yeah, if you're honest about it.
Yeah.
How many people can be honest with themselves and admit where they are?
That's why I took and made my list here, to be honest with you guys. So I was going to put top 5, and I could probably have, I think, 100 failures. And when I learned to embrace failure, I think is when I just started to relax about it. And so one that kind of hits close to the kind of my soul, my emotions, is I've had a number of broken business relationships, and those feel like failure. Like, if you don't, these were people that you were pretty tight with, and then they don't end well, and you could let it end with how it didn't end well, and that would feel like a failure, I think. But for my personality, the ones that come to mind, I have 3 pretty close to the soul ones, and all of those, the relationship has been restored. And so that's what might have looked like a failure, probably made me a greater man than I am today, or was before what I was today. Number 2, this is specific to the industry. We've talked about William O'Neill and his investment strategy, and there's a little company called Cascade International.
Okay.
And I thought, I am going to start using O'Neill's strategy for you guys, our clients. And so I bought Cascade International.
Sure thing. It was a sure thing.
It wasn't for Ralph. It was for Beverly. I put it in Mom's account. And my friend Brian owned this stock too. So I take some solace in that. Brian's probably the best stock investor.
You invited to Thanksgiving?
She didn't even know it happened. She loved me. So that's unconditional love. It was a total scam. It wasn't just a bad investment. It was a Ponzi scheme. And we had a total return of 100% loss on that. And that's pretty humiliating. I was a stockbroker at the time. And to have that happen is a really good failure because it makes you trust that the markets aren't nice.
Yeah.
But had I not had that, I probably wouldn't be the investor I am today. And then the third failure that I used to watch The Apprentice. I don't know if you watched that.
Sure did.
And I could not handle when Trump said, "You're fired."
I think that made you uncomfortable.
Well, I heard that a couple of times as a young man. Once was from Burger King. Who gets fired from Burger King?
I'm sure you were just misunderstood.
I was. Yeah, I'm not gonna this is a family show. I'm not gonna tell you what I did. So then the Evansville Courier and Press, the newspaper company, I just couldn't get up in time to get those papers delivered by 6. And so I got a "you're fired" there. But probably the most humiliating one is I didn't understand when I got in this business that I thought that all of you people that hired us would just give me like bear hugs and love me forever. I never knew that people would fire me. Like that's kind of, that's really humiliating. All those things would feel like failure, but those people that have fired me over the years have made me a better advisor. And I couldn't appreciate, I bet it took me a decade to appreciate that. That was a really hard failure, but that taught me a ton.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think about failures, I think most of my biggest failures, I have a whole bunch of failures that we could cite up on a spreadsheet and plot a data chart. But I think most of them come from a couple of places, and they start with limiting beliefs. And they start with upper limit challenges. And the way I would define an upper limit challenge is it's probably something deep, something in the past, something through childhood, something that was just traumatic. And so something like that happens where you have a failure as a kid, and all of a sudden that identity is embraced. Mm. And so one of my failures as a kid is I lost the 6th grade presidential election. My good friend Chris, he was a wise guy. He knew that I couldn't spell anything. I really struggled in spelling. I don't even know if they do spelling anymore, but I really struggled. You do the spelling bee in school. Everybody participated at Mitchell, and I just couldn't spell to save my life. And so Chris says to our class, "Why would you vote for Doug to be class president when he can't spell Gorbachev?" And I froze. And here I am embarrassed in front of all my classmates. I doubt he could spell Gorbachev, but like, who can spell Gorbachev? But so this upper limit challenge began of, I'm not smart enough for that. And that extends itself through school, through professions. And when you whiff at something, you think about those times, all those failures that you're reminded of in the past. And it's a mindset trap. And so those upper limit challenges are really great to address head on. And when you can do that, and you can have some wins, and you can break through in some areas, you can laugh, you can tell the story, you can have courage. And if I think about any failures I've had, it's had to go through that cycle of where did this come from, and then be able to address it with the honest answer.
Man, that. I guess self-reflection and being objective about it, not personalizing it, not identifying yourself as that failure or mistake. Like if you can separate the performance from who you are, if you can get to that point in life, I think you can begin to really live. Because I think if failure is so intimidating to you that you won't try, then I don't know a greater failure than not trying.
Where it becomes actually enjoyable with a failure, I think, and where I've embraced failing, is just realizing that I don't have to do it alone. And so, have you ever taken a personality test like the Myers-Briggs, or we did one here recently, the Working Genius? It's very good. You can get on Working Genius and take it. And all of these things talk about your strengths, your weaknesses, things you don't like to do. And the best part about being honest with a failure and digging a little deeper is saying, you know what? I bet there's somebody else out there who just loves this topic that I'm whiffing at, or has a great strength, just a natural strength in spelling world leaders. And so you can find these people, they're out there, and you can team up with them. And then all of a sudden you get to see someone shining in an area that you're weak, and you can laugh, you can joke, you can praise, you can promote. And next thing you know, this person is bringing purpose to your life because they're taking care of the issue that you just are no good at. And that's my favorite part of the team aspect, is bringing in help and then going at things together.
Yeah, a friend of ours, John Lynch, I think his book was called True Faced or something it's something along that character. And I think there's a tendency to want to put a mask on. And if I mask over things, I can act like things are better than what they were. But if you can take that mask off and just be honest about things, I think you can jump into situations and laugh about them, because at least you're willing to go into that. And I don't know. I don't think I worry about a lot of things. I think concern is the word I have, or what I might have called worry in the past. But I wondered if that every kid's a winner process that happened for a while, where you give every kid a trophy, if it didn't maybe soften up our culture a little bit, because losing in life is actually winning. And my thoughts is, if you can lose to a point where you go, oh, maybe I need to go work on my jump shot, or maybe I need to go do this. But if you can't lose because it hurts too much to my soul, I don't know how you can move forward.
And eventually you're going to lose. You can be distracted by the next thing that you're good at. Our society promotes that, and we're profitable enough where people can have choice. But eventually you're going to run into something that just knocks you down.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Naya at the coffee shop, and Naya she was concerned because an idea she had maybe won't pan out. And I could just see her countenance drop. And so I would see her day by day. And she told me, that she was trying to take this test and she failed it. And again, I could see her countenance down. And I think with other people's failure, we can help lift them back up, because who hasn't failed? So if you fail a test, we've been taught the whole point of the test is to get the grade, right? But that's not the point of a test. Like none of this was the point. My dad might have been taught the point was to get a grade point average. Yeah. But the point is that I learned something valuable. And maybe what you learn by flunking a test is, maybe I need to study harder. Maybe I don't want to ever take that class again in there's a lot of things you can learn from it. Like, maybe this isn't my giftedness. Maybe this is what I should hire somebody else to do rather than me.
Yeah.
So that's why the idea of embracing failure is really hard, because we're not really even taught how to use failure. I don't know. How did you learn to use failure? Who taught you?
I think business has taught me how to embrace failure. I could look back and I could say maybe it was music and band and orchestra or swimming and cross country and sports and all that. But I don't think there's a better teacher than business, because all businesses is relationships, it's trusted relationships. And when something happens that didn't go our way, and there's failure and there's a separation of a relationship, it really hurts. And so it causes me to dive a little deeper and think, what was it? Where did I mess this up? Where's the ownership? There's no adults in the room, so I've got to step up and really own this one. And so, if you can develop a no excuses mindset, the buck stops here. I think that's the start to help someone fight against failure.
I notice we've got scientists on the call today, and I don't even know that my experience with you is that you view the world differently too, because part of what I recall about science is you start off with a hypothesis, this idea that I want to test for. And that hypothesis, if you're doing science right, I think is a lot of times it's just going to be wrong. It's just not going to be true. And what science does is it shows you that it's not true. And so I would imagine if you're a chemist or whatever, that as you're testing, that a lot of the things you're testing for prove not useful. So is that a failure? Is that a success? And maybe the scientific method might help people think through it. What am I really trying to learn today?
I really like math people. I married a math teacher, but I like math people because there's really not a whole lot of emotion in math. Some people say love wins. I remember Caroline put up a sign at our house, and we've had the love does something great for you signs, but she put up a sign at once that said math wins. and I really like the idea that as a math person, you're trying to get something to fail all the time. And I'm listening to a podcast interview of the guy who invented Siri. And he says that he is constantly trying to break AI. How is he constantly trying to break it? He's trying to ask it questions that it cannot answer. And that's math, because it's all just inputs. The data's out there. He's asking it something that it cannot process. And I think that's how we move forward too, is we challenge what we think we know to be true, and we just try and refine it and refine it and refine it to make it better. And in a lot of ways, it's just a math problem. And when you can take the emotions out of things, first you can admit the failure, and then you can move on. You can actually laugh and joke around, and then just have much better perspective to move forward with a trusted relationship.
But I think math, like I probably couldn't have concisely said what you just said, but I think I would give credit to Paul Harvey as helping me think through failure. Our youngsters on the line, he was an old newscaster. He's probably been dead for 25 years. I don't know. But he had a daily show on called The Rest of the Story. And he would tell these stories of these humans. He wouldn't tell you who the person was until the end of the story. And he'd tell you this horrific story of their life. And then he would tell you who it was, and he'd say, and now you know the rest of the story. And really, all he was doing was a very simple math equation. Is anybody who has had great success in life has had great failure. I don't know anybody that's had great success without great failure. And all it was he was telling the story of their great failure to tell you that perseverance gets them to success. And then I kind of fell in love, got a man crush on Mike Rowe, because he kind of plagiarized. He probably wouldn't appreciate that, but Paul Harvey's with his podcast was called The Rest of the Story. And it's the same principle. And maybe part of how you might get over, like if you're afraid of failure, is maybe start reading or listening to some biographies or autobiographies, because I think the more that you know that people who have succeeded, they just had to put their head out there and get punched a few times figuratively in life, but they just had to keep putting their head up like the whack-a-mole.
Yeah. And eventually somebody takes notice. Somebody believes in you. and they allow you to have some failure. They allow you to screw some things up and keep going. Chuck Yeager is a hero at the Shreve House right now. Warner's reading a book about Chuck Yeager, and this guy had all kinds of failures and ridiculous self-inflicted wounds that he did that he shouldn't have been doing. There was someone else who helped encourage him and to say, hey, yeah, we saw that, but let's keep moving forward. And so if you have someone in your life that you could extend favor to, that could boost their career, that could boost their family. It's hard to know the magnifier by just believing in somebody and helping lead them, what that can do for them.
Our friend Ben was going to join us today, and unfortunately he has COVID, but he's kind of one of those people. I don't know that failure was his problem, but there were things in his past.
Yeah.
But what I'm so proud of Ben is he just kept putting one foot in front of the other, right? Like, it'd have been easy to not take that next step. And that next step, maybe I don't even know what the next step is, but I just moved forward. Like, when all else fails, don't turn right or left. Just go forward unless you hit a wall or something. I think that's been, for me, mostly, I don't have to turn left or right. I can just keep going forward. And in that same vein, I think of our friend Russ, who retired a couple of years ago from the Air Force as a 3-star general. And I remember when he was telling me, he said he had a ROTC at the University of New Hampshire, and the professor in charge of the ROTC had all the people write a letter about why they should win the scholarship. I don't know if there were 10 people in the ROTC. I mean, the University of New Hampshire. What could it be? And, sorry, Russ. And I think of the 10 people, the only person who didn't get a scholarship was him.
Wow.
And his essay basically said, I want to fly planes and kill our enemies. And the professor said, you're politically incorrect. And there's no way at the University of New Hampshire that there was ever a greater military success than that one person. And he was the only one that didn't get the scholarship.
Are they the license plate that says live free or die?
New Hampshire, yeah. Live free or die.
That professor must have had a different license plate on his car.
Yeah, I don't think Russ is the guy that would go kind of go rub in his face, and he may not. I don't even, because probably after that happened, we didn't have the internet where you could, because you wouldn't think to follow, if you didn't give him the scholarship, you wouldn't have thought to follow his career. Right? He'd be the one you wouldn't follow their career. It'd be the other 9 if you thought you had the wisdom. But we've talked about that book, Balcony People, and who knows what you cheering somebody else on. But to watch Russ elevate, and he had to literally take a lot of rejection in life to keep moving forward. But if all you saw was where he retired and you Googled him and you saw his pretty picture and saw some of his accolades, you would have no idea of the failure that led to him getting there. And that's true with everybody is. So for our younger friends, if I could encourage you to go try something that you're probably going to fail at today, and not do it with like your emotions attached. Just go try something outside of your comfort zone and see what happens. I think it's a huge
challenge, though. And I'm not on the socials. Like, there's just so much pressure on kids today. Like, they might have 1,000 people following them on their socials, on their Instagram page or whatever they're on, and so to filter out the noise. I mean, we all had to do that even before the socials became popular, or I think that first iPhone, wouldn't it come out in 2007?
Something like that, yeah.
And so, like, you've got all this negative energy coming at you, reminding you. There might even be a picture of your failure. And that's where it gets really tough. And to be able to embrace those things, that's next level courage. When you can look at it and there's an actual track record, or there's people out there cheering against you. I mean, that to me is where it gets, it's just the toughest. And for the kids out there, and I say kids, but I'll say anybody, I don't care if you're 60 years old and you got an Instagram and a Snapchat and a Facebook, you've got these loud voices coming at you, and they are really difficult to process. And so I think a real relationship, a real friendship is where it comes in. And even if you just have one or two of those, or if it's your son or daughter, just to be able to bounce these things off of and talk about them is super important.
I think that's the catalyst of what kind of prompted this topic for today, because I was sitting here with Caleb earlier and teaching him about the market, what to look at stocks, and I just had to show him a failure. I did it. The failure worked in my favor, but I made a big mistake on a stock trade for myself yesterday. And the idea is that it's risky if you don't have a profit in a stock to hold it through the earnings announcement. And I looked at it and saw the stock was up really big this morning. And I'm like, oh, I really screwed up, Caleb, is that I shouldn't have held that overnight because the earnings were coming out. And if a stock goes up big because of an earnings announcement, whatever value it went up, it's a 50-50 chance it could have gone the other way. And to have a zero gain and to take that kind of risk on that, it's just a bad decision. It was a failure, even though the outcome reinforced keep doing that. It's a failure. It's a bad decision. And so that's what I had to do. I had to explain that to Caleb, is that the outcome looked good, but a positive outcome with a bad execution in anything in life, I think is probably a bigger failure than a negative outcome. Because if you get a positive outcome by doing something wrong in life and you keep doing that, it's going to get you in a bad place. Probably my biggest pet peeve of that example today, one of the things I do not like is sports gambling. And that whole idea of us giving you a positive outcome to build a habit is how they do it. I think I saw last night on one of the TV shows, they're giving you $5 to win 150 or something like that. That they're just trying to get you to make a bad decision with positive reinforcement on it. And so that where you get that positive reinforcement in a bad decision is really a true failure
before you make a bet.
Right. Yeah. And so those kind of things are really psychologically hard to understand until you can see that it's a problem. But like, if you could admit that I failed or made a mistake on that, one of the things I do is take selfies of it. And I don't post those on my social media. When I go through and look at my pictures on my camera, then I look at that and go, that was pretty freaking funny right there. Cause, that was embarrassing at the moment because it happened that way, but I can really laugh about it. I can kind of show Connie. I'm like, yeah, that's what I did there. And most of us don't like to fail publicly, but if you can get over that, you're probably going to be able to walk through those public failures or even private failures. You're going to be able to move forward in a better manner.
You just might be on the next Paul Harvey episode.
Good. And hopefully, if you're hanging out with us today and you haven't thought about failure and the benefit of failure, maybe today this conversation will help up your average and so that you can take the next failure and work it to your advantage.